Have you lost the connection with your higher self? Are you noticing the dis-ease of the outside world? It's time to reconnect with nature and each other and raise our consciousness, vibration, and frequency. Together we can create a world of peace and abundance. It's Spiritual Revolution Radio with your host, Dr. Will Miller.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the show today. I have some awesome guests with me. I'm so excited to have them in the studio. You know, it's so nice not to just to do this electronically anymore and actually have live bodies in here with me. But I want everyone to welcome Miss Cammie and Mr. West to the show. And it's Cammie and West Taylor, so everybody knows. And we're going to talk about a lot what they do. You're going to hear about what they do. And they do very different things. Cammie is an amazing artist, and she makes these awesome drums and does drum circles and retreats, and they do their retreats together. And Wes spends a lot of time with horses, and really using horses as a way to help people really get in tune with themselves and nature and how the world works. And they work together in that endeavor. And welcome to the show, both of you.
Thanks.
Thank you. It's great to be live and in person myself, too. Yes.
It is kind of fun. So make sure you're talking into the mic so I can hear you good today. And I may have to turn you up a little bit. So as you talk, if I'm adjusting stuff, it's just because I can't hear you the way I need to, okay? So one of you start. Just kind of give us a brief history of how you got to, we can't take the whole hour, but, you know, a brief history, how you got here, what brought you to this place, and maybe a better explanation of what I said, what you do.
Oh, wow. Our brief history goes back 35 years. So
Yeah.
we've been married 35 years, so we've been working on this evolution of life for a long time together, and trying to find our way with that, trying to understand kind of who we are, why we're here, and you know, what we can do. We've definitely had some trials and some struggles. As I think the majority of our life, the first number of, I don't know, I'd say a good 25 years of that, we were pretty, I'll keep it to me. I was pretty closed off, pretty narrow-minded, pretty kind of in the rut of life and just allowing life to dictate to me how it was going to be. And I was just kind of the sheep to follow along. I would say that pretty much my first 25 years in our relationship was like that. So through that, though, we've had some great transformations. We've had some amazing life experiences. Some of them, I've had 2 near-death experiences in my life that really, really shook and woke me up to the core, and that's been that's a great way to have some transformation. But I don't always recommend that because you know it's you're too close to the edge. You don't know whether they're going to make it back or not. But luckily, I made it back twice. So we've really learned and worked together here in the last few years, and watching Cammie go through her transformation of her kind of discovering her artist and her creative side and her spiritual side has been phenomenal for me to witness and watch that, and then for me to partake and participate in that with her has been phenomenal. So
Those near-death experiences, how long ago were they?
the first one was 22 years ago, and then the second one was 9 years ago.
9 years ago.
Yeah.
So which one really shook you out of, say, more into your spiritual side and out of the sheeple world that we live in?
That first one, 22 years ago, really got me. I was severely abusing alcohol and was really train wrecking my life at the time. And that experience really pulled me out of that overnight. I mean, I went from a 15, 20-year functioning alcoholic. I mean, I made it to work every day. That was part of my ethic. As long as I can make it to work, this is fine.
Then, yeah, you do what you want.
I made it to work a lot of times, just completely hungover and just barely made it. But that was part of my core, was I always had to make it to work, and so that experience, literally overnight, like I quit drinking, I quit smoking, I quit all my nicotine, tobacco, alcohol. I quit it all in that one instance. It literally, it happened in one moment. And you hear people talk about, well, transformation just takes a moment. But, you can stretch that moment out. It can take you days, weeks, years, months, decades to make your transformation. But it literally can happen in a moment when the pressure's hard enough, high enough.
And I do think the decision comes in a moment, maybe, right? But it takes years of practice. Lots of moments of practice. It's probably the best way to put that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It took me 2 years of practice to believe he wasn't going to change and go back to the way he was. 2 years, that's a long time in my life to be worrying about
Right.
the change.
Well, and now you say, and that was after,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Because you'd had all those grains of sand that
Yeah.
had already fell in the bottom of the glass, right?
Yep,
And
15 years of it, living with an alcoholic. I was done and ready to leave, and then he comes home and he's like a changed man, and I'm like, "Are you sure?" I don't know.
I don't blame her for being cautious. I really don't.
Well, I mean, that's human nature.
Yeah.
Where you had all that conditioning for 15 years to be cautious,
Yeah,
right? It takes a little while to overcome that old conditioning and find the new West, really. And which you did, it sounds like. So,
Yeah.
Awesome.
he keeps
Congratulations.
reinventing himself. I think he's husband number 4 at this point. Never been divorced, but husband number 4.
That's kind of a fun little thing we like to say is that, or I'll describe that to somebody like, well, I'm Cammie's 4th husband, but she's never been divorced, and just let that kind of hang in the air for people to contemplate. And like, how does that work?
Probably do a whole class on that.
Probably.
Honestly, you want to make your marriage really last. All you got to do is be 4 different people,
Yeah.
or 5, because you might be a 5th before we're done, or 60, but who knows?
Very well could be.
Yeah. And you have to change together.
Yeah. Well, you do
Yeah.
have to grow together for sure.
Yeah.
Everything's a frequency. Right? We talk about that on this show all the time. If that person's not kind of keeping up with your frequency, you'll move on, or they'll move on because you don't like each other anymore. You're in a different place, right? So I'm glad you guys are still in the same place.
Yeah.
And I've seen a lot of what you do, and I've heard about more of what you do than I've seen, I should say. But I've driven past your ranch. And
Nice.
I've been out to your house, and I know the drum circles you do and those kind of things. So tell us when you started doing your drums and what you're doing in your art, so we know when that started. And then we're going to come back to you, Wes, and find out when you started with the horses.
Oh my gosh, probably like 2009, right? The market was crashing. We were losing our business, and we had to just figure out new ways of being, new things to do. So we went to this class in Salt Lake. We didn't really know what it was, but it was like a weekend retreat, and they brought drums, and we did drumming, and that was the first time that both of us were able to connect with a drum. At first I was like, oh, this is fun. I like this kind of stuff. I love all this native stuff, but then we played the drums and we did the circle, and it changed my life forever, like hearing the heartbeat of the drum for the first time, and then wanting to get my own, and then I painted mine, and people saw my painting, and so I started painting other people's, and next thing you know, there's no drums to paint, so I had to start making them. And then people wanted to make their own, so now I'm teaching drum making. It just evolved over the last 10 years.
10 years.
So, yeah, we built a retreat center where I could bring people to make drums. He can bring people to work with horses. And so we do that together.
So tell me about the horses. When did you start this whole process? I think you had been training horses, period, before all this started, hadn't you?
A little bit. It was more of a kind of the same time period that she was talking about when she found her passion in building the drums and helping people with drums. Was, like she said, we'd lost our business. We were really at I guess we can just call it a life transformation, or it's most commonly referred to as a midlife crisis. We just kind of lost everything and lost our identity of who. Like I was so wrapped up in my business that I was totally identified with business, and so when that went away, I was like, well, gosh, who am I? What am I without all this chaos in my life that I've created? Who am I without all this stress? And that's when we both kind of took a big step backwards and was like, let's figure this out. Let's do something passionate in our life. I didn't want to just go back to business. She didn't want to just go back to supporting me in business. And so she kind of found the drums, and that's when I found the horses. So we both kind of got into that together-ish and moved that along. And so prior to that, I didn't know anything about horses prior to about 12, 13 years ago. I could sit on a horse and look good sitting on a horse, and that was it. But I didn't know. Well, here's what I knew about horses was you took green stuff out of your pocket, you went to the feed store and you bought green stuff, and you put that green stuff in the front of the horse, and then the green stuff come out the back of the horse, and you pick that up, green stuff, and put it in your green garbage can. That's what I knew about horses.
You probably still know that.
Yeah, that model still works just the same. It hasn't changed one bit.
I
But-
used to have horses. I know that process.
Yeah. But I was really trying to redefine myself, and I went and adopted a couple of wild Mustangs from the BLM. So a horse that once lived out in the desert in the wild, had never been in contact with a human, and I thought, hey, that's a great place to learn about horses. I'll start with one of those wild ones. I don't recommend that necessarily, but that's what I did. And so that was kind of my journey. I was really I was trying to define me. I was trying to find something about me. I didn't want to go back to business. I didn't want to go back to chasing a dollar. I wanted to do something purposeful in my life, and the horse just kept coming up for me, so I just kept following that.
What's the name of your ranch, so everybody knows?
That's the Wild West Mustang Ranch, and it kind of fits the name-wise, both all the way around, and that's in Fremont, Utah, so it's about a 3-hour drive north of St. George. Up at the base of the Fish Lake Mountain and Boulder Mountain and Thousand Lake Mountain. Oh, it is.
It's beautiful up there. Yeah. Like I said, I've driven past your ranch before. When I've been up by Fish Lake and with a friend, they said, we've got to go drive by this place.
Well, hopefully next time you'll drive by and stop in and say hi.
I don't think you guys were there. So
Okay.
So what kind of brought you into using horses as a way, I don't want to necessarily say healing, but really you are healing the soul. You're transforming people. So that's what you're doing. So what kind of led into that for you guys?
For me, it was, I really wanted to understand how the horse operated. I really wanted to understand the mental side, how do they work? How do you train a horse? Because I was starting out that was going to be my new profession. I was going to be a horse trainer. That's what I wanted to do, was train horses. That just was in my mind. And so I really went super deep down that rabbit hole of learning how to train a horse or how to work with a horse. And I had some great mentors, some people that really led me on a great way. And one of them was Dr. Stephen Peters. He's a neuroscientist, a neurologist. And he was sharing with me so he's a very experienced brain doctor. He understands the neurochemistry of human brains. And he also has a love and a passion for horses. So he's been overlaying his human knowledge of decades and working with horses and dissecting horse brains to try to follow those same neurochemical pathways of how does things work with a human and how does that work same or different with horses. And so he's got some great research. And that's kind of what got me going. So I really got into the neuroscience, the neurochemicals of horses, how to calm them down when they're stressed. When there's too much cortisol and too much adrenaline flowing through their system, they're very difficult to train, and they're very difficult for them to learn anything at that high stress level. And so by talking with him, I really got into the neurochemistry of it and really got to understanding how to keep those horses nice, down-regulated, build them to be calm and confident rather than, cracked out and crazy, sketchy horses. And I did that for a number of years, probably a good 5-8 years, just my own research with the horses. And then I really was thinking, man, these horses can make such a massive transformation. I can take this wild horse right out of the desert that never seen a human, bring it into my world, and in a matter of literally hours, days, I can connect and build and work with this horse and have a huge transformation. I was like, why can't I do that in my life? If this horse can do it, why can't I? What is my holdup? Why can't I make this transformation? Why am I so stuck in some of my ways? And so I really started to try to find that overlay for myself of, wow, I can teach this horse to do this, but what about me?
Sure.
And so that's when it really started making a turn for the human. And this was only about 5 years ago that I really started looking at, how do I access this for humans? What does this mean to a human? With the horses, we've got pressure, release, and reward as part of their learning model, and overlapping, finding that with humans. How is it similar? How is it different? How do I apply pressure to myself? What's my release? What's my reward? Neurochemically.
Right. So how do you take that, use the horses, I guess, maybe is the best way of saying that. How do you use the horse in the process of this transformation with people now in your retreats?
What I've found over the years is that a human can observe a horse in a very non-judgmental way. So that prefrontal cortex, our human mind, the judgment, the evaluation, the labeling, all of that part, when they're viewing or listening to or kind of working with a horse, that kind of goes offline because the horse doesn't have a prefrontal cortex, doesn't have very much of it that for our ego to engage with. It's just not there in their brain. And I think it just kind of has the human just really go to a quieter place, just a softer place, because there's nothing to connect to. You can't argue with a horse. You can't muscle them around and push them around. They're much bigger, much faster, much stronger.
They'll just kick you.
Yeah, and so you've really got to kind of find a quiet place, this soul inside, to make this spiritual connection, this energetic connection with the horse, because that's what the horse is reading you. That's all the horse is reading is your energy, what you feel like, what your neurochemistry is like, what your senses are like. And if you're full of fear and full of caution and full of anxiety, that horse can sense that, and they'll be very cautious and they'll be edgy. You know, they're less likely to connect and work with you. So the horse is such a great model for humans to practice connecting with, because there's no judgment. There's nothing coming back other than just positive feedback, and whether they're relaxing or calming.
Yeah, and horses are so energetic, energetically minded. Despite their training, one of the horses I owned was my horse. I had them for my daughters too, but my horse was Gus, and Gus had been a thoroughbred. And despite his training, he learned to ride differently, much differently with me, right?
For sure.
He still had a hard time being at the back of the pack. He didn't like being behind any other horses. But,
Yep.
Obviously that's trained in.
For
Same
sure.
with us, same with humans,
For
right?
sure.
We're trained in a certain way over and over and over again. We're conditioned to believe certain things or think certain ways. And that's what you're talking about.
Absolutely.
That's really hard to let go of. Right?
Absolutely.
And make that transformation you were talking about that you did.
Yeah.
5
So
years ago.
I got to be like on the front lines, because a lot of times I was videoing all of these classes he was doing for his horse people. He has a horse online, what do you call it? A subscription course.
Yeah.
So people can learn how to train their horses. So I'm videoing, but then afterwards I'm sharing with him, wow, this is what I saw and this is what I learned. And I was going through some pretty hard times during that, because I became an empty nester, and I'd been a mom my whole life, and that's all I wanted to do. And now all of a sudden there's no kids to take care of. And so I'm like, what am I supposed to do with all my time? Well, the horses were teaching me how to, stay calm, slow down, all the
And that's
things.
really where we kind of got started, was you and I, Kemi and I, we'd have these talks after working with the horses, and she would bring up things, and I was like, we were trying to make it more human, because I could work with a horse and get horses to do great things, but she would have questions. I'm like, well, how do we do this in our relationship? How do you and I take the same model we're working with this horse, and how do we bring that into our relationship and make these changes?
The horses kick and bite, but I flee and fight. So we had to figure out how to stop doing all of that with each other.
Yeah, and probably based on our condition, everyone's different. Some will flee
Yeah.
and fight. We do. We have
Yep.
this fight or flight, but people handle that in many different ways.
Yeah.
Some are very quiet about it and hold on to things, and others are very verbal about it.
Yeah. Yep.
And don't. So it's learning that. Of course, tell me, at the ranch, how many do we have? A lot of horses we're working with all the time there?
Well, I have too many. When people ask me how many horses I have, I say too many.
It's addictive.
Yeah. Right now, I've only got 7 right now, which is much more of a manageable number. A couple of years ago, I had like 15. And they were all kind of project horses that I'd brought in and was working through different things. And I don't like just selling horses. I'm not a horse trader seller kind of guy, so I don't just roll horses through. So when one comes in, I get kind of really attached, or I really want to work with them and try to release whatever their fear and trauma is and what they've got going on. And so I don't just let them go until I feel like they're really capable to go and be with somebody and really have a solid relationship. So 7's the number right now. I'd like to get that down to 4. 4 would be perfect.
Yeah. But he does a lot of work with other people's horses. So there's always new ones coming, and a lot of trauma horses that other people need help with.
I just kind of started getting into the trauma horses a few years ago. The more I kept working this neuroscience, and I was like, what's, trauma in humans is, the hardest thing for us to kind of work through, for a lot of us to make those changes. And I found that to be very true with the horses as well. And I had to reach out to my neuroscience friend, Dr. Peters, kind of ask him some guidance on trauma and how that gets unwound in the human brain and system, and how to unwind that in a horse. And his quote that he left me with that meant the most to me was, well, for trauma, it'll probably take 100 more good experiences than just regular training. So if you're just going to regularly train a horse to do something, you could maybe do it in 2, 3, 5, 8, 10 times. If there's trauma in the way, expect 100 times. It just takes longer.
And it's the same with people.
I was gonna
We've
say
learned
it's
that.
the same with people.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Yep.
If there's trauma involved, you've got to work through that
Yeah.
trauma. Like you were saying, it took you a couple of years to trust him again
Yeah.
after those 15 years. So it's the same thing. If that had never happened, it'd be an easy transformation for us all. But
Yeah.
with all that history, it's a difficult thing to do. So, tell us a little bit about your art and how all this plays in, and the drums, and I know you guys are doing retreats out at the ranch. Is it at the ranch you do the retreats? I guess I assume that.
Yeah, we host them there, and then we'll also do them. We're going to do some in St. George. We'll just rent a property here and do some retreats in different. So we can do them anywhere really, but St. George and the ranch is what we're looking at for this next 2023 season.
Yeah. So about 5 years ago, maybe, give or take, I met this lady named Melody Ross, and she came out to our ranch and she did this retreat at our facility, and I got to participate, and it's all healing with art. She does art healing. So cut and paste journaling and gluing, and I just realized how important that is. That's a good way for me to relax, to hit the pause button, to heal my trauma. If I can, I'm not a very good writer yet, and so she puts it all into words, and you just cut out the words and put it however you want. And so I started doing a lot of that, and I got certified through her course. But when I can sit down and like paint on a drum, it just checks out my brain. It goes offline. There's no more trauma. I'm just in another place, and it really is healing. So I love doing it for other people.
So tell us, what are the retreats like? I mean, is it 100 people? I mean, how do people find you, get into a retreat? What is a retreat? What can people expect? Let's just go there.
What we like to do, the best case scenario is like we'll try to find maybe another facilitator that's already kind of got their own audience or their own people, and then they want to bring them to our place and do a retreat together. So kind of co-facilitate with other healers or other modalities that way, and then we can offer what we offer to their group, and they can do their own teaching while they're at our group. That's the best model at work that we like to do, and then we only like to do that with people that we really resonate with or we have a good vibe with. That
I
just
should say I have a long list for you, because
Nice.
this is what I do in my show.
Yeah.
Everything is talk to people to do those kind of things.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, and that's been the most successful, because that way we get a good cohesive group. They're already like-minded, they're already together to some extent, and then they can come and we can introduce them to some new things like the horses and the drumming, or the labyrinth walk that we might do at our place that they might not have access to in their other group. So
Yeah. So my part of it is we'll tie drums if they want to. We'll make rattles, which is just another instrument for meditation and sound healing. I make medicine bags. We've done anywhere from 8-year-old children's and mommy and me groups to adults to men's groups, women's groups. So I facilitate a labyrinth walk and then do drumming circles. But then we also love crazy things like ice baths. And we're right in the middle of nature. So everything we do is nature-based with the horses. And the lake is close by, so we'll go do a cold dip in the river. And it could be anything that we want to create, really.
group size, though, a good question. I mean, 8 to 10 that's the number we like to work with. Bigger numbers it's just kind of too big for what we want to do. We like a smaller, intimate group that we can, we're together all weekend, and we want to be close to them and have it be have them feel a part of our home and our place and feel a part of
I was
it.
going to say, do they stay out there at the end of the ranch?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we
Hey,
have 2 teepees,
yep. We have teepees for people to stay in.
8
so
beds.
it's kind of group housing that way, 4 in each teepee, and then we've got a little camp trailer that we put a couple of people in, and then we've had people bring their own RVs. We have 3 RV hookups that are full hookups, so if you want to just bring your own RV and stay in it, then that's fine too. Some people bring their own tent, or we've had people just roll out sleeping bags and just sleep right there on the grass by the fire at night, which is wonderful too.
We
Whatever
have the
whatever
best
works.
stars on the planet there because there's no light, so
There
it's
is
just
no-
the
yeah,
best
there you
stars
are out
ever.
there kind of alone.
Yeah.
So don't go stay in Torrey anymore, is what you're saying. Come stay here.
That's-
Just drag my trailer over there.
Yeah,
Yep,
exactly.
yep. Come and stay at the
Mhm.
Don't
ranch.
stay in Torrey.
Yes.
Okay, gotcha.
Do it.
I actually enjoy Torrey, but you guys are so close to there.
Yeah. We love Torrey too. We'll go down and eat and hike and
Yeah, they have
enjoy.
stuff going on down there. We take groups, and we've even gone down there and done some things. So
Yeah.
So when you do the ice baths, where do you do them? Got about 20 seconds left before the break.
We have a big silver horse trough. We
Is
just
that what you
fill
do?
it full of
Right,
ice.
yeah.
I was curious
Yep.
where that
My
came
friend
from.
Tammy sells ice, and we just have a bunch of ice.
That's awesome. Well, when we come back from the break, we're going to talk more about the retreats and how people find you and what we do there. All right, everybody, be back in just a few minutes.
We'll be right back with more of Spiritual Revolution Radio with Dr. Will Miller on Radio St. George 100.3 FM.
What if we measured the success of our economy less in terms of profit and more in terms of care?
What if we tracked gains and losses not in dollars, but in the quality of human lives? I'm Anne Strainchamps.
I'm Ray Suarez, and I hope you'll join us for the final episode of Going for Broke. Our question next time, can work be love? New ways of thinking about jobs.
Join us on To the Best of Our Knowledge.
To the Best of Our Knowledge with Anne Strainchamps. Friday mornings at 8 on Radio St. George 100.3 FM.
Hola, te saluda Zoe Sánchez para invitarte a que escuches mi programa todos los lunes y los miércoles a las 6 p.m. y todos los sábados a las 10 de la mañana y a las 2 de la tarde y solamente aquí en Radio St. George 100.3 FM.
Engaging Stories with Snap Judgment, Friday mornings at 10 on Radio St. George 100.3 FM.
Welcome back to Spiritual Revolution Radio on Radio St. George 100.3 FM. And now your host.
It's Dr. Will. I really have told him like 3 times, our engineer, that he needs to fix that little intro there and add mine and have him say my name instead of me. All right? The announcer should say my name.
Yeah.
I think so too. But now we're on the air saying it, so he'll know now in the future. All right. Well, we're back and with Cammie and West, and we are talking about just the retreats that they've been doing and what they're doing with it. And this next 20 minutes or so, I really want to kind of get into more what the retreat looks like. What does someone do with a horse? And what kind of got some music going in the background. So it's the Angels. They're back.
They're joining us.
They're
We'll
joining
take them.
in. So, just what that kind of entails. And then, you talked about that the retreats really can be all over the place. So, maybe before we even get into the details, is the retreat something you design, or do you wait for a group that's coming and is it customized more? What kind of tell us?
It's a little more customized with the group kind of coming in. Meaning, we have lots that we can do, but we really just kind of go with what does it feel like, and we'll even make plans. And as a lot of people know, you might wake up in the morning thinking you're going to do X, Y, Z, and next thing you know, you're doing 3, 4, 5. You just got to shift with what's happening and what's flowing, and so that's a lot of how we really work it. We've got tools, we got things that we like to do, but there's a flow, there's a connection, a feel that we kind of work with each group to see kind of where they're at, what they're wanting to experience, and so we like just having that fluidity to kind of flow that way. But the basic, the underlying message of the whole retreat is just lowering our autonomic system, our stress response, just finding ways to slow ourselves down, get back to that parasympathetic nervous system, this rest, relax state, because we just don't get there enough as humans. We just don't. Our lives are so programmed to be stress motivated, to just be running and gunning. That's what we define success as, is how busy are you, and somebody's asking if you can meet them at Tuesday at 3:00. Well, I don't know, let me check my calendar. And instead of saying, well, hell yeah, I want to meet with you at 3:00, I'll make it happen. We got so much going on that we just don't get slowed down. And that's, the horses have taught me that for the last 15 years, that we got a great quote at the ranch that we used with horses, and now we're really using it with humans, but slow down faster and you'll get done sooner. And so we're trying to, we want to implement that with people too. It's just, we just got to slow down. We're going so fast, we're just burning ourselves out. Stress overload, adrenal overload, cognitive overload, and so we get some of the people at the ranch come and hang out with us, and Cammy will start drumming, maybe around the campfire, at night before they go to bed, and we'll just start a little bit of drumming, and man, these people just almost drop unconscious. They haven't slowed down that much in 20 years. And, it might be the first time they've sat around a campfire and just had nothing to talk about, just could sit there and relax. So it's really about finding ways we can help them mentally just start slowing that down. It's the stories that we tell, the things in our mind, the stories we allow to be true without fact checking. A lot of that keeps us running when we just don't need to.
Yeah, one of my favorite old mentors is a good friend of mine. Bob Proctor was his name, and he'd always say it's not about slowing down, it's about calming down, right? Don't slow down, just calm down, and learn to live a calm life. And this is exactly what you just said, so it's so cool to hear that come out of your mouth.
Calm down faster. Get done sooner.
There you go.
Yeah,
Well, probably calm down faster to live longer. That might be how that would work.
That's for sure.
Probably.
For sure.
Actually, that's, your neuroscience will tell you that's the truth.
Yeah.
Actually, if we can calm down, if we can get out of that fight or flight response and all that cortisol being released and all those, everything that a horse goes through, when it's going through trouble, all that response, you do live longer. It's a lot easier on your body.
And that's a great lead into how we use the horses. So we use the horse as a visual teacher or a visual co-facilitator, because we'll set different things up for the horse to do in the round pen that are stress related. You might ask this horse to go over and walk across this scratchy tarp that's laying on the ground, and if it's a new green horse that hasn't had that experience before, it's going to be very stressed and anxious about that experience. Because we can talk about how we're just going to slow down and let this horse relax and engage and do this as slow as the horse needs to. And then you can watch these different biological markers in the horse. They're lowering their head, they're blinking their eyes, their ears are getting a little softer, and then the horse will lick and chew. You can see their respiratory rate change. We hook heart monitors up to the horses, and we can see their heart rate just drop as they relax. That's when the learning and the healing can happen. The learning and the healing can't happen at the high stress level. And so the horse is such a great teacher, and we tell the people, imagine that this horse is your autonomic system. You're seeing your autonomic stress system in live action right now, and people can really make that comparison with a horse. They just really will lean into that. And that's one of the biggest transformational tools we have, is letting the horse be the teacher, for people to see themselves as the horse navigates this stressful experience. And then I kind of talk and coach through what's going on from a neurochemical standpoint. And the folks can really relate to, I get pretty stressed, and I try to avoid things too. If the horse turns and leaves the tarp and is like, no, I don't want to do that. And the people are like, I avoid my stresses too. I avoid them. I try to flee from them.
Actually, that's a good lesson in and of its own, because so many times when we're faced with stress, we think we have to stay in it. And it's okay sometimes to leave the stress for a moment and do exactly what you're talking about. Beat on some drums, or just observe wildlife, for that matter, or be in nature, staring at the stars.
Absolutely.
Do you feed people? I wanted to ask that. Are you feeding them while they're at the ranch? Or are they
Some we do, some we don't. A lot of the groups will have some special dietary needs, and if it works for the group, we love to put the food back on them. You guys bring it as a community, cook it as a community, serve it as a community, eat it as a community.
So you have the facilities
a group.
To do that.
Yeah, it's camp cooking.
It's glamping.
It's camp cooking.
Yeah,
Yep.
Our barn has actually been turned into an eating area. We have all the things, the fridge, but we have Traegers and camp chefs and Dutch ovens, and so when we cook, it's usually cowboy cooking.
Oh, yeah, that's the way it should be. You're on the ranch.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's the Wild West Mustang Ranch. You've got to have that kind of
Yep.
Yeah. So if we do food, we hire the local cowboy cooks to come and do it for us, and that's what you get is steak and potatoes and beans and salad and that kind of stuff. But we've had some groups that wanted to do their, they had special dietary needs for whatever processes they were doing or experiencing that they wanted to have through the weekend, and so they bring all their own, and then we just eat and join with them.
So is this what you're both doing full time now?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay.
Yep, we're transitioning. We've been doing it, up there for these last 5 years, and we're transitioning now and offering some online courses that we're doing this year. So that's new for us in 2023. Will be some online coaching, some online experiences that we're doing.
And we do that with a horse too. So that's
Yeah,
fun.
we use the horse to teach in there too. The horse is I'm just too connected to the horse. The horse has brought me too far to leave behind at this point. There's no way I could leave the horse behind.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's how you went through your transformation.
Oh,
right?
absolutely.
So,
Yeah.
So you're just sharing your experience.
Absolutely.
Yeah. We just finished a online group about relationships with self and relationships with food, just relationships in general. And we used a horse to do some of the teaching. And by the end of the 8 weeks, the women were like, we need some swag with the Cuz's picture. Cuz was the name of the horse. And they were in love with Cuz by the end of the 8-week course. We're like, hey, what about us? Nope, they wanted the horse swag.
Yeah, send us a picture. Send us more pictures of the horse. That's what we kept hearing.
Yep, he's a great teacher.
Well, yeah, and that's what you want. I mean, because that's a unique experience.
Yeah.
I do retreats, but never have I used horses or any kind of wildlife in my retreat. You're coming and you're in more of a classroom setting, so it's unique and it's kind of cool. In fact, we may be talking, by the way, about
yes,
me
let's
coming
do it.
out there to do a retreat
Perfect.
this year.
We would
bring
love
my
to
group
have
out
you.
there. Yeah, I think that would be a blast. We also should just talk about going riding.
Yes.
It's been 6 years for me since I've been on.
Wow.
Well, that's not too long.
It's not a long time, but when I had horses, of course, I went all the time. And my business partner in my other business, you guys know my other business is restaurants, but he owns a ranch in Farron, and so I always used to ride with him. But when I moved to St. George, that all just kind of went away. So,
Well, the beauty of St. George, you can pretty much ride you around. So.
Yeah, I know that is, and it's true. It's kind of nice.
Yeah, that's a very therapeutic experience as well, to just get out into the backcountry. And a few years ago, we did some guided backcountry trips. We'd pack people out and go stay in the backcountry for 2, 3, 4 nights and just have some experiences out there. It was just phenomenal being out in nature that long. Not that that's a good amount of time, but longer is even better. But
yeah, when I was younger, all of my hunting was horse hunting. We didn't, back then we just didn't have the RVs and things we have nowadays.
Yeah.
So I kind of miss that, from my childhood growing up.
that's what I've got some trails up there at the ranch that are only accessible by foot or horse, because I like getting out on those and not having a lot of the ATVs in the area, those areas. So it's enjoyable that way.
As long as I'm not looking straight down, we'll be totally fine. So that's when I'm looking straight down.
All right, I'll adjust our trip a little bit.
I suspected that because I know
Yeah.
where you're at.
He goes on harder rides when I'm not with him too. I just want some flat little hills and a path. I don't like going bush hopping and through the forest trying to find your way. Yeah.
I get in discovery mode and I want to just take off.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind some of that. I just don't want to be on the edge of a cliff.
Yeah.
Especially on a horse. That just makes you that much higher.
Yeah.
All right, so tell people how to find you real quick. We've got some more time. We're going to be talking about some things, but let's get it into the show. How do people find you? How do they get a hold of you for a retreat or find out more information?
Gosh, all the social media channels, you can search us up and find us on there. But West, like the direction, WEST, and then Taylor, TAYLOR.net is my website. So that's a great anchor spot to start there. But Instagram, Facebook, you can all search me with just my name and come up and find me that way. And then Cammie.
Yeah, that's where I'm at too. Cammie Taylor. Cammie Taylor Art is my pages.
And you
I
can
don't
see
have a
a lot
website
of your
yet.
drums and
Yeah.
the things that you do because I've gone to your site
Yep.
since we've talked. I've looked a little bit, but you do have pictures there.
Yep.
And talk about the rattles and other things you make.
Yep.
So,
It's been fun to watch Cammie make her art and kind of how she markets and sells it. And it's not like she's in a production mode of creating a lot of things. I'll watch and she'll just kind of go along, and all of a sudden one day she's just got this idea to make this drum, and she's like, I'm excited to make this drum, and she'll get it made, and then like, not sure what I want to paint on this, and then in the middle of the night she's gone and up all night painting, and this wonderful paintings on there, and then she'll kind of post online and asking, whose drum is this? So it's almost like she's custom building each one for somebody, and she just doesn't know who it is. And that's been really fun to watch that. And then she'll come in and she'll tell me, she's like, guess what? The so-and-so drum's going to Florida. I'm shipping it out tomorrow to a nice lady in Florida. And I'm like, wow, that's so fun to have it be that. So it's really a personal piece of her as she makes these different pieces of art. It's when the mood feels right and the vibe is there and it feels good. And we didn't really want it. She doesn't want it to be a job or a thing she has to go and do. And so it's been really fun to just let it be her flow and her feel and just make whatever it is that she makes and then let the right owner come and find it. That's been really fun to just let it flow.
yeah, that's cool. She gets those premonitions and connects, she has those connections, and it's amazing how the world start doing those kinds of things, how you just know to connect at the right time, everything works exactly how it should. That's also part of why we need to stop thinking so much and just get back to
Well, and that
having
when she first, mind if I talk about you for a little bit?
Go ahead.
I'll just keep talking. But when she first kind of was getting into making these different healing tools, we both kind of had the belief that, well, they had to be made for somebody. So we had to wait and have somebody contact us and say they wanted her to make a drum or whatever. And it was very much kind of that way, that we would find the person first and then build the tool. But it's so much more fluid now for her to just build that healing tool and let the right person flow and come to it. That has been just really much more relaxing and much easier to do, and just to let that flow that way.
you're going with the flow of
Yeah.
nature instead of forcing nature, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really.
I brought one with me. I can show it to you after.
You did?
Yeah.
A drum?
Yeah. My newest one I brought.
Well, you should show it. We have cameras
Oh.
all over the studio.
Did you bring it in here?
Well,
Yeah.
Oh,
let's,
well,
let's show it. It's all on Facebook Live right now, and
Yeah.
we're going to move it to other platforms.
Yeah. It's all getting ready to go to.
Can you see? Yeah,
There we go. Yeah. So this is a buffalo drum with a angel on there.
And when you say buffalo drum, so buffalo skin,
Yeah. Buffalo hide. Mm-hmm.
hide.
Yep.
Yes,
buffalo.
I guess that would be hide, not skin.
well, same thing. Yeah,
Yeah.
it depends on the terminology, how she uses it. But
Yep. All natural.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And I've your friend Tammy, is a mutual friend. I've seen her drum you made, and it's much bigger than that one.
Yeah.
Bigger around. It's a beautiful drum.
Those are the ones we make in the retreats. We usually do 18-inch big ones.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah.
yeah, that's been so fun to watch. And it's mostly ladies. I don't know if guys aren't necessarily opposed to making drums, but it's mostly ladies that we find that are coming. But when she'll get a group of 8 or 10 ladies to come to the ranch and do a retreat and make drums, that's kind of the whole focus of the retreat. How fun that is, and how rewarding to watch these ladies start out with just this parts and pieces and not, it's just separate items. And then over the course of the weekend, as that comes together, and by the last day when that drum is cured and dried and it's now got some resonance, it's got its own voice, and it's speaking now, and the ladies are playing those drums around the ranch or around the campfire at night. Wow, what a fun transformation for those ladies to do that. And now they have this their own healing tool to take home with them that they built, that their hands put it together and tied it and laced it. And Cammy's got some just some coaching. You talk through and building that drum. What's your intention, and what are you building into this as you're running the lacing? What are you lacing into your life? What are you lacing into your future? And how do you want to tie this? And what things do you want to tie together in your life? And it's just so neat to watch the ladies create this work of art for themselves.
Right. Yeah. And I'm sure that it's that way that women seem to do these things more than men, but it is changing a little bit.
For sure.
I've really noticed the last few years. We're kind of coming around to being okay with our spiritual side.
Yeah.
It's that again. We go back to that old conditioning where we're kind of, at least me and my age, I was taught that men don't cry, and you're going to grow up and be tough, and sitting around a campfire putting a drum together and then beating on it isn't, it doesn't fall into the tough guy category.
That's a little, that's a little far left of center, right?
Yeah, it took West a while to come around. He
It
used
did.
to say, "This is your thing."
It really did.
But now he's right there in the sand next to the river, helping people tie the drums. He knows how to do it. He doesn't do his own very often, but he gets in there.
It did take me a while to come around to it, though. But what really kind of helped me make the shift over into it was I got injured in not doing things correctly with a horse. We learned some good quotes at the ranch. One is, "Don't let the red stuff leak out of your body. It's really hard to put back in." And I was one of those moments, and I was healing and laying in my chair in the house there trying to recover from some injuries, and she kept bringing me a drum and was just play this drum, and just play this drum while you're sitting here. And I couldn't move or do much else, and so that's when I really got kind of in touch with drumming, and it would just soften my pain, and I could just feel my body just relaxing and just resonating with those tones and that vibration. And so instead of all of my thoughts being external about everything I should and could be doing, I very much more internal. I started feeling the pain, or I could feel the healing inside starting to happen. My body just got softer and quieter, and that's really when I was like, okay, I think you're onto something with these drums. I should be a little more on board with you, and that really, that was an awesome experience for me. But we do need to have experiences for us to really make some changes, and that was my experience.
We do. I mean, if you're not having those experiences, you're probably not finding a reason to change, right? Or a reason to even try it. And drums, anything with a vibration like that, is a really healing property because of the vibration that comes from it. And it clears your head, like you were talking about.
Completely.
You know, if you're just sitting there all alone in a room on a couch, you know, you're so stuck in your own head. And the best place we can be is out of that chattery mind and finding, I always call it your heart space, you know, get out of your head and into your heart. Because your heart is that place where the healing, you feel all of that healing and emotion and those things that go along with it. And exactly like you're talking about with the horses, you know, as I'm sitting here thinking about this, you know, those horses are coming from that place. They're an emotional animal, right? They're feeling those emotions. They're feeling the fear. They're feeling all those things. And I remember when I first got my horse Gus, he was a little, you know, out of control. In fact, that's how I met my business partner. I hired him as my horse trainer. But you know, that he could sense that fear.
Yeah.
And I'd often have to trade with my horse trainer, who was also riding. He'd say, "You ride my horse. You know, let me take him for a minute because of that."
There's a lot absolutely in that, being more internal. And when you're around the horses, if your mind is very external, like you said, very loud or chattery of what's going on in your head, you're not connecting with that horse. You're not aware. You're not in this now moment. You're somewhere forward in time or somewhere back in time.
Right.
And that horse is reading you. And the horse has but one question that the horse holds. And the horse is asking this one question: am I safe? And that horse is asking itself that question from an energetic standpoint. And if your mind is all over the place, then the answer that comes back is no, you're not safe with this person, because their mind it's noisy, it's chaos, it's stress, and that says you're not safe. And so the horse will read that and then be aloof or be a little cautious or be a little standoffish or whatever it is. So that's another tool in finding that internal. How quiet can I be in myself and really connect with this horse and connect with myself in this now moment, and just relax and let me and this horse, you know, find a vibe together. That's the healing space.
What a great experience for people to have.
It's scary. It's scary for a lot of people, but it's very healing. You know, once you kind of get past that initial kind of shock and fear of, oh wow, I'm actually present, like right now I'm here, because we're so usually not here, you know, we're mentally other places. But once you kind of feel, that's what I tell people, is that once you get in and feel this, then you can recreate it easier. But if you don't know what it feels like, it's really hard to know when you're on the spot, when you're there that first few times.
How long does it usually take for someone to say settle down, you know, and get into that mode? Right?
It depends on the person. Some can do right away.
Depends on the trauma.
Some can't. Yeah, some just can't. In whatever time, they're just too. The human is kind of too triggered. Their own question of safety isn't answered. They can't answer it enough for themselves to even unwind and just kind of relax right there. But generally, though, it's just moments. Once they kind of get in a little bit of coaching, I get them breathing, get them conscious of their breath. And a lot of times I'll walk up behind them and kind of put my hands on their shoulders and say, just relax. And they're like, oh, I am. And I'm like pushing on their shoulders, and they're just like a football player. Yeah. They're like, oh, I am.
I'm so relaxed right now.
Yeah. I'm like, no, like really, just relax. And then I'll just rest my hands on their shoulders, and you can feel them just,
It's kind of like the beginning of this radio show, right?
Yeah.
Because you get all nervous, right, when we first start, and then you realize, oh, we're just here having a conversation.
Yeah, we're
It's
just
not
talking.
Such a big deal.
Yeah.
Right? I read a lot, and we're getting down to the last 3 minutes, so kind of keep that in mind. But I've read a lot where kids do especially well with horses, and even special needs kids even more so do well training with horses. Any experiences with that?
Yeah. You know, I'll see if I can squeeze this in 3 minutes, but I got to work with an autistic young boy one time, and his mom just asked me to do whatever with him. Just be with him and let him be with the horse. And I would really try to just take that in as like, let me just flow and be with this. And the horses really resonate and connect with younger people, I think, because they don't have as much chatter going on. You know, they haven't had 25 years of faking it. You know, they're just more authentic and a little more open. But working with this autistic boy, I asked him one time, I said, what do you think the horse wants right now? And he paused and he looked over at the horse, and turned around, he goes, well, he wants a Dr. Pepper and a piece of pizza. And at first I kind of chuckled and laughed, and I was like, oh, cute. And then in my mind I was like, who am I to say that he didn't really hear that from that horse? Who am I to take that away from him for that to not be his truth? And I really just had to back up a minute, and I was like, man, thank you for teaching me, young man. Thank you for teaching me to get out of my way. How do I not know that horse doesn't want to know what a Dr. Pepper and a piece of pizza tastes like?
Probably does. Yeah. Really, I mean, it is so true. I learn more from the retreats I do than anybody that comes.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love those experiences.
Yep.
We're down to about a minute, just about a minute. So tell everybody where to find you once more so they can find you.
Yep. My website, westtaylor.net. And from there, and we're getting that all redone and rebranded. So here in another month, it's going to be Cammie and I both, but it'll all be housed right there. So that's probably the best place to start, westtaylor.net. And then all the social media, Facebook and Instagram. Well, that's not all, but that's all we can handle right now. Facebook and Instagram is enough for me to try to manage and keep up with. And my Instagram is Wild West Mustang Ranch, and Facebook is West Taylor at Wild West Mustang Ranch.
And you have a YouTube.
Oh, yeah, on YouTube.
Wild West Mustang Ranch.
Yeah.
You just remember that. That's
find
a great
that.
name to use. You can find them there. Everybody, you can find me at lifebydesign.institute. And I love people to come into the show. So if you want to be on the show, get a hold of me at spiritualrevolutionradio.com. And my number's there, so you can text me from there if you want. Or you can just reach out to me off the website. So definitely get a hold of us there and find these guys. I am so excited. I'm going to be working with you in the future, just so you know.
Let's do it.
All right. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you for having us.
Love and peace, everyone.
This has been Spiritual Revolution Radio with Dr. Will Miller. For more information or to be a guest, please visit lifebydesign.institute. Join us next week for another edition of Spiritual Revolution Radio with your host, Dr. Will Miller.